Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another special edition of Litter Media Live. I'm Mike Smith. Our guest today on our special edition is Rhiannon Gill. She is the Executive Director of the Child Protection Center. Our interview today brought to you by Kingston National Bank. Back with Rhiannon Gill right after this.
Wherever you are there for a reason. You shouldn't have to make a trip to the branch just to deposit a check. Skip the trip and use our mobile app to easily and securely deposit checks from your phone. Day or night, wherever you are, or whatever you're doing. Download the Kingston National Bank Mobility app today.
We're back with Rhiannon Gill, again, the Executive Director of the Child Protection Center. I think we had you in when you first came on board.
Yes, sir.
With the center, and that's been a year.
It's been almost 2 years.
2 years now. Time goes by. Of course, about this time every year, there's an event that takes place at the head of Yoctangee Park where you bring attention to the community of this tragedy. It really is a tragedy that is child abuse.
That is right, sir. So every year we do Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is here in April. This year we'll be doing our Prevention Month ceremony at the entrance of Yoctangee Park, where we'll be putting ribbons and pinwheels in the trees.
A little bit of a format change, I think you said?
Yeah, so usually we do multiples of thousands of pinwheels that represent each child that has made a call of neglect in the city. So this year, instead of doing multiples of pinwheels, we're actually putting ribbons in the trees and a small amount of pinwheels by the sign. So this year, the number that we are representing is 1,954 cases of abuse here in Ross County alone.
Right. Now, although that number represents Ross County, the Child Protection Center, you get cases coming to you from many area counties.
That is correct. So we actually cover counties from Scioto County to Pike County. We cover Pickaway and Fayette and Meigs. So basically our surrounding counties are also our sister counties that come to our agency. So last year alone, we saw over 500 children in total, and roughly 200 of those children were Ross County children.
So when you get a case to investigate, it doesn't come directly to you, does it? It comes through law enforcement?
That is correct. We're a referral agency. So we actually get referrals from law enforcement. So we get Chillicothe PD, we get the Sheriff's Department, and any other local PDs and Sheriff's Departments from the other counties. And then we also get Job and Family Services, which is Child Protective Services from the other counties that refer to us. In addition to that, we also get ER referrals that we route those through our physician, and then we decide whether those particular cases will be seen at our agency as well.
One of the disturbing statistics that you were telling me about before we went on the air with this interview was that a overwhelming majority of the cases that pan out to be actual abuse are people that the youth know.
Absolutely. The statistic is actually that 90% of the situations that occur, the child knows the abuser that they love and trust.
And unfortunately, sometimes that's supposed to be the people they're supposed to trust.
Exactly. So sadly, the statistic is that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused by the age of 17. Of those cases, 70% of sex reported cases, even including adults, those reported are under the age of 17.
You used the term earlier when we were discussing this, human trafficking. We hear so much about this on the news today, but oftentimes we're hearing it in the context of migrants that are coming into the country. But that's happening with kids that are brought up here in the States.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, we see many cases of human trafficking come through our agency. And usually the individual who is trafficking the child is someone they know and trust. And in most instances in our area, we refer to it as rural human trafficking. And it's a parent that is trafficking their child for their drug addiction.
What should parents do to try to protect their kids to stay safe from these type of incidents?
Well, a lot of it is paying more attention. It's vitally important that we understand that our children are not growing up in the age that we grew up in, where we can leave doors open and unlocked, where we don't have to monitor them on their internet. 1 in 5 children is solicited on the internet on a daily basis. So you can imagine that if you don't know what they're doing, a lot of times they're being solicited and groomed for long periods of time. These types of individuals take the time to groom these children so that they have a bond with them. A lot of times it's really important just to pay attention. And most importantly is to believe them when they say something is coming to them. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's vitally important that your children are able to talk to you, that they can come to you and say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I think something's not quite right. And it's important for them to understand to trust their gut feeling at all times.
So that is in response to the question, what can parents who really care what happens to their kids can do? But what if a youngster is watching this interview and they are being abused by somebody in their family? How can they get help?
So ultimately, they could call our office and we would explain to them how to move forward in the process. And many times we would tell them that they could call Children's Services, that they can call law enforcement. But what's really important to understand is that there are people out there who are mandated reporters, which ultimately means that if a child goes to a school counselor and says, hey, this is happening to me, that school counselor automatically has to notify Children's Services. And that starts the ball rolling. It's important for children out there to understand that there are people who can help you, that there are people who will believe you, and that ultimately by coming forward, that is the bravest thing that you can do.
What are we seeing in relation to if a youngster is abused in some way? Does that set up a pattern where they somehow in this warped world that they think that, well, I deserve this, and it causes other problems down the road for them?
Unfortunately, we refer to these things as adverse childhood experiences. And for every adverse childhood experience, it is a new experience that your child learns, and it basically sets a standard for them. So if your first sexual experience is a violent sexual experience by somebody who inappropriately touched you or sexually assaulted you, that becomes a learning block for you. And unfortunately, it opens a child up to many different things. It could be anything from health risks to mental health risks to suicidal ideation to disturbances with appetite. So they could potentially have a disorder like bulimia or anorexia. Some children cut. What's important to remember is that these traumas are workable and work throughable. And it's really important that we have that opportunity to come forward and have our stories told. And that's basically what we do at our agency. Yeah. When children come to us, it is their opportunity to have somebody hear their story, know what's going on, and then get them connected with the services that they vitally need to become healthy individuals.
There's a couple of young ladies in our community that, thank God, have been set free from that life, but they became involved in prostitutes, drug abuse, and their story was that a lot of it started with abuse, human trafficking, and they had this mindset, this is what I am, and somehow I deserve this, which is wrong, but they have been freed of that, and they are telling their stories to other women that come through our community. You don't have to stay in this situation.
That's absolutely correct. Unfortunately, we live in an area where we have very few resources, but the resources that we have are very powerful. It's really important to be able to understand that it is okay to come forward and that there are going to be people that believe you and that understand what's happening is not your fault.
What you do, in my opinion, is a calling. But you were sharing with me earlier, and I think when you had your initial interview here a couple of years ago, you were actually in the armed forces, but there became a connection that you had in your duties that kind of led you to this step eventually.
Yes, I am a survivor of sexual assault myself. My son is also a survivor of child sexual abuse, and it is just one of those things that I believe that needs to be brought out there. When I was in the service, I was a sexual violence victim advocate, and it was so important to just have somebody there with you when you were going through one of the worst times in your life, and somebody who wasn't judging you, who was understanding and thoughtful and caring. And I feel like that's my calling, that ultimately this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Rhiannon, anything else about what you are doing or the program coming up on April 4th you want to touch on?
So we have a few other events that are happening this month as well. So we have a couple of fundraisers out there. On April the 17th in Scioto and Pike counties, we are having a Hotheads fundraiser where we receive 25% of all the sales that mention our particular agency. There is a flyer that will be posted on our Facebook page, which I believe is being linked to this interview.
Yes.
So you'll be able to print that flyer off, go to the particular Hotheads in Pike County and Scioto County and say, hey, I want my funds to go to this particular agency. And then on April 24th, we're doing a Raising Cane's fundraiser here in Chillicothe, where the same thing is happening. We get 15% of the sales if you mention the CPC or give them our flyer.
One last question about the ceremony on April 4th, which, by the way, starts
5th.
at noon. Oh, I'm sorry, the 5th.
The 5th.
I keep getting my days mixed up. When you get old, that happens a lot. April 5th. Dan had a good laugh on that. April 5th, which is Friday. It's at the head of Yoctangee Park, which is the south side of the park going in. I know you've only been here a couple of years, but have you met people that have come to this event that have been able to be helped by being there?
Absolutely. And it's one of those situations where once I got into this position, people have come up to me in public and been like, oh, you work here. Oh, I've been through that particular place. So one of the things that we're doing this year to highlight some of the services that we provide is that we were going to have an actual survivor and tell their story and how our agency helped them. The particular survivor had a granddaughter who had several things happen to her, including sexual abuse. And she received all of our services to include our supervised visitation program. So she's going to be there to highlight those particular services and let the people know what we do.
Very good. Rhiannon, again, God bless you for what you and your colleagues are doing down there, and keep it up.
Thank you so much for having me.
Again, Rhiannon Gill, Executive Director of the Child Protection Center. Don't forget the Child Abuse Prevention Ceremony at the head of Yoctangee Park. That's Friday, April the 5th, starting at 12 noon. She's been our guest on a special edition of Lunar Media Live today, brought to you by Kingston National Bank. I'm Mike Smith.